Thank you everyone for joining us for the day 2 of our regional launch event for Integrated Urban Services. Again, my name is Jennifer Daw, and here are my contact details. If you have any questions on this program, please feel free to reach out. So let's go to the next slide. We wanted to provide a quick overview of our agenda for today. We'll be starting with a brief recap of day 1, including some polling questions. We are, as Isabel mentioned, trying to make this a little more interactive for the second day. Following that, Parthiv Kurup from NREL will be speaking about the Pilot City project, which is a very exciting component of the Integrated Urban Services program. And we are actively seeking cities and interested partners to participate in 2 Pilot City projects for us. We will also be having a panel discussion with 3 different panelists and time for question and answer. Presentation from one of our NREL experts on ASEAN Smart Cities, project themes and insights, and finally some closing remarks and opportunity for more questions. Let's go to the next slide, please. As a reminder, or for those who could not join on the first night, Integrated Urban Services Program is being done in partnership with United States Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or US-ASEAN, Smart Cities Partnership, with a goal of helping ASEAN cities build resilience in their energy, water, and food systems. This is a 3-year program which just started in January of this year, funded by the US State Department and led by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Our goal is demonstrating socioeconomic value and urban benefits of resource recovery and reuse through more integrated systems that promote greater efficiency, improve water and energy security, and mitigate public health concerns. And a key focus of this program, as I mentioned, will be pilot projects where we really want to work hands-on with 2 pilot cities in addressing problems that they're experiencing around their energy, water, food systems, and devising actionable solutions that are market-based. We have more information posted on our website, and I will mention as well, all the materials from the workshop as well as recordings of the workshop will be shared after the event with everyone who has registered. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the first step of our interactive component for this evening or this morning, depending where you are. In the chat, I believe that Isabel has entered the URL for Poll EV, and we're asking that you please go there, and we have 2 polling questions that we will be posing to you to get a sense of your understanding of the integrated urban services concepts. Okay, and Isabel, are you sharing that screen? Okay, it's just starting. Thank you.
Yep, it is just starting. So if you went to that URL, you should be able to see that now. Excellent. Actually.
So the question here is, what words come to mind when you think of integrated urban services? What does that mean to you? This could be based on what you learned from the first day of the workshop, or if you're new today, what do you think of when we use that type of terminology? And please enter your responses. You can enter more than one, just one word at a time, please. Okay, I see the link. Someone is having difficulty clicking the link. Are you able to perhaps copy and paste the link into a browser? That might help. Or Isabel, I don't know if there's a clickable link that you can put in there.
I think that might just be the function of Zoom's chat, that it's not clickable. So
I see.
You just have to paste it in.
Okay, yes, so please copy and paste that link. And then we're going through a word cloud exercise here. So the responses that we are receiving the most are the largest. So sustainability, we're seeing that as a key takeaway. Wholeheartedly agree. I think that a lot of the intersection of urban services is looking at the increasing and competing demand for resources. And so sustainability is central to that. Also seeing the word infrastructure, very important, yes, whether it's aging infrastructure, the need for infrastructure, the need for coordinated or co-optimizing infrastructure. Data, I see that one popping out as well. I think that that is a really good observation, especially when you look at how you can operate these systems. And I think if anyone's having difficulty using the link, you could also feel free to enter your response in the chat, and that would be perfectly helpful too. Apologies if the link is not working for some. So several mention of water, energy, water, food, efficiency. I see collaboration as well, and I think that that's a key takeaway and need associated with integrated urban services. Often these sectors or entities within governments are very siloed and don't typically work with one another. And so that is an especially important need, and to look at how they can come together more and think about their systems more holistically. Great. It seems like we've slowed down a little bit on the word cloud. Why don't we try the second question?
Sure.
Okay. So the next one, what would be needed to expand the adoption of integrated approaches to address urban energy, water, and food or land system challenges? So what would facilitate this? Whether it's in your city or if you're an academic, a private sector partner, what would help promote more of these types of solutions? And so here you can enter response, and I think you can also upvote. So if you see someone writing in a response that you agree with, I think you can like it in the system and give it a thumbs up.
Correct. Yes, you can. So if you see what you were going to put in there, it will read the same one multiple times, but you can upvote, and the highest upvoted ones will remain up here.
Okay, so we see breaking of silos, policy and political leadership, absolutely. Need for collaboration, big ideas. Yes, I think this is a time for creativity, for sure. We'll give this another minute and see how people respond to one another's. Economically driven solutions. Obviously, we're talking about being cost effective. I think funding is also a key question. How can you implement these solutions? But I do see a lot of policy up there at the top, okay? Let's see. Great. So finance, institutional frameworks. Okay, yep, I think this is a really great list, and we appreciate your feedback on this. Some of these really ring true with what we've been hearing in the first day of this workshop and the research that we've seen in this space. Great, I think we've slowed down a little bit on the voting exercise here. And Isabel, if you'll go to the next slides, I guess I'll just summarize and kind of wrap this section up with some of the key takeaways from the first day of the workshop, which, to be honest, I think everyone hit on a lot of the points in the voting exercise that we just went through. So one of the key takeaways is that there is a need for greater cooperation, as well as structures to facilitate that. You know, we saw mention of silos, for example, and it can be difficult to work across those. So there needs to be some kind of motivation or unifying framework to bring partners together. And this can also include, how do you engage stakeholders who are not part of a government organization? And to really think about, how do you bring disparate systems together, such as energy, water, and provision of food within the constraints of a city? And the next, we really see a need for more holistic or master planning. And a component of this may involve capacity building, so providing training and ensuring education is provided to all different partners so they understand the trade-offs associated with the decisions they're making and the implications that might have on other associated systems. Again, looking at how interconnected energy, water, and food are. And obviously, with the growing risks associated with climate change, both now and in the future, there's a lot of need and pressure for us to think through these systems more holistically. And also in the context of addressing public health risks and other challenges that are currently being faced by cities. Another key takeaway is that I think there's an opportunity here for co-innovation and multi-sector partnerships. So bringing together public and private resources to finance the solutions. It is not always possible for the government to finance on their own. And I think that there's a lot of innovation here that could be attractive to private sector and could engage a broader team, including government, academia, private sector, and other stakeholders to come up with the right solutions that are a real fit for the community and provide broader sustainability benefits. And the final takeaway from day one, we heard this in particular in the presentation from San Francisco, was looking at the need for metrics, the idea around how do you measure the impact that you're having, and what is that feedback loop? How do you know that your work is successful? Particularly focused on the economics and quality of life impacts, but certainly there are broader sustainability benefits that having more integrated approaches can provide. And so this is another piece of the puzzle, kind of defining, creating that roadmap for how you measure success and how you know that you're having the right impact through your work. All right, next slide, please. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Parthiv Kurup, who will speak more about the pilot city projects, which again are a key component of this research effort. So hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I thought I would be able to speak for a little bit of time on the pilot city projects and what we've got in mind coming up. Next slide, please. So really, what's in it for your city? And the biggest benefit is working directly with a US national lab to develop these integrated energy, water, food solutions. And keep in mind, NREL has world-class researchers in fields like renewable energy, water management, system dynamics modeling. And so that'll really be beneficial from that side. Then, as Jen was saying, one of the key activities will be capacity building and technical assistance for key community stakeholders, primarily in 2022 and 2023. Another key benefit will be making sure that you're involved and understanding the key issues in the US ASEAN cities network better and how green economic developments can be suited for your city. And as Jen was suggesting, at the end of these assessments, it'll lead to actionable steps for your city. And then those actions can help support the sustainability and resilience goals, which are key for going forward. At the end of this process, it's also likely that other climate funds and institutions like ADB could be involved for future funding efforts. Next slide, please. So right now, we haven't started the application, but I wanted to take you through the application process from now and until selection. So immediately, it's important to designate a point of contact, a POC. Then look out for the application, which will be coming in August. So the applications will all open on the 31st of August. Then the applications will be due on the 25th of October. In that time, please reach out to us to really work with us on developing your proposal, making it stronger so that it can be a good proposal. We can help you through some of the process. Then subsequently, we will have NREL review of the applications, then internal down select, then selection of the two cities. Next slide, please. So to highlight again, what is this capacity building and technical support? What could it look like? So these pilot projects will really offer the ability for technical or other solutions that are identified as needs for your cities. For example, we can be part of the planning and design of these ideas or even into the governance structures. But the key is that the support will be targeted for your city. We will, of course, focus on areas like sustainable and low impact strategies for water management and energy and waste treatment, and that'll be built into that thinking. In terms of some of the potential technical analysis and support, we may be able to do modeling and support of some selected technology and solutions. But the main is that this analysis and planning efforts will really help lead to business plans, which hopefully you can take and engage with private sector stakeholders as well. Next slide, please. In terms of the selection criteria for these projects, how are we thinking? What are we thinking through? This will be in more detail in the actual application, so this is just a highlight. One of the most important will be an active government and community engagement where there is support for energy, water, food. And so this proposal should ideally have diverse stakeholders working with novel or net zero solutions. It's important that one application is created per city and the application being led by the city representative. As part of this proposal and application, it's important that at least one of the city services should be involved, such as the utility operator or the energy or water utility, land management, permitting, and so on. And ideally, you want to have as many of these interplays as possible. Now, whilst priority will be given to the cities in the ASEAN network, if really good proposals are received from other cities, of course, we will consider that too. And again, iterating, we really want to see great partnerships and the city working with universities and businesses and NGOs together to be able to have solutions which are then valuable in communities. It's also important that as part of this effort, there are dedicated staff or people who have dedicated time who can think through and look at this type of cross-sectoral perspective, ideally with decision-making authority or quick access to being able to make decisions. Next slide, please. And so what could make a good project? And the solution really needs to use or focus on commercially ready technologies in other markets. And we say this because requesting assistance for innovative but not yet market-ready technologies may not provide you the most help. And so we want to see a solution which is really ready and possible for your situation. In terms of the technical assistance, it's really good to be able to target a specific, clearly defined EWF challenge. We want self-sustainability in the sense that we want you to own this solution and be able to work with it further. And so we're really concerned and interested in what are your biggest concerns? Is it resilience? Is it how renewables will change your grid? Is it how renewables will affect water treatment, for example? Good projects will also need us to have access to data. So for example, energy loads, food demands, water utilization, what type of water desalination is happening today and what's being treated. So data quality is an important aspect. And when you're making your requests, really think about it from specific requests, such as for capacity building, training, and understanding how these types of integrated solutions could work for your city. Eventually, those requests should lead to business developments and ideally business plans with commercial focus. Next slide, please. So the application timeline has already started, but it will open on the 31st of August, 2021. We will make sure that we send through the application to the attendees and the network. There will be a webinar in September to ensure more of these questions are answered and also just reiterate some of the process steps. The application deadline is the 25th of October, 2021. And then from October till about January 2022, we'll be doing internal reviews of the applications. And again, please reach out to us during the application to be able to understand how to structure and frame your proposal better. And then in 2022, January 25th, we're expecting to notify the selected cities. Then the period of technical assistance would likely be from February to September 2023. Next slide, please. In summary, please provide one application per city through a partnership between different parties and including at least one utility The applications will open on the 31st of August. And again, we will send through that application document shortly. And make sure then that you reach out to us in between the end of August and the 25th of October when the deadline is due. And in summary, again, why should you apply? Why is this an exciting and important area for you to look into and put in applications? The key is that the targeted energy, water, food solutions can really help integrate these types of systems and take it into actionable steps. And that's the key. We want this to be more than analysis. We want real impact that you can make. And eventually, there could also be potential access to green climate funds or other funding avenues to take these solutions to implementation. Next slide, please. And so please join us for the Q&A webinar in September. We will send the date through when that is set. Thank you very much. Jeff, Jennifer?
Yes, thanks, Parthiv. We actually had one question come in, which we could probably go ahead and address right now.
Great.
And the question asks, says, as cities search for tech partners or tech transfer programs for their application or to work with the pilot cities, how could startups ensure that they could be found by these cities, or how do they connect startups with the pilot cities, essentially?
Great question. And I will suggest this, that these startups, if you can reach out to us and then join the community of practice, that's one of our mechanisms of being able to engage with different activities in different areas along the commercialization spectrum. And also then you would be able to connect to our experts as well. So I would suggest the community of practice for a first step. Great question.
Great. Thanks, Parthiv.
Thanks, Jeff.
I was going to say, I think that's all the questions we have for now. And please feel free to send more questions as you have them throughout the time here. And for now, we can go ahead and move on to the next panel and address more as they come up. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Helen Santiago Fink, the program manager for the U.S. ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership, and she's going to be the moderator for our next few speakers.
Thank you very much, Parthiv and Jeff, and welcome to everyone. I would like to introduce our first speaker for our panel entitled A Tale of Three Cities. It is Professor and Dr. Yoko Hari from the Graduate School of Engineering at the University of Tokyo. Professor Yoko Hari, please.
Oh, thank you very much. Can I share my slides, which I have in my computer? Oh, here we go. There we go. Now I hope we can see my slide. Well, first of all, thank you, chairpersons, for kindly introducing me. And good morning, Asia, and good evening, United States. I'm very honored to be here today to discuss how ASEAN cities may become resilient in food, not by applying modern technologies, but mainly by rediscovering vernacular food systems at ASEAN cities maintained in their history. And today I will be taking Tokyo and Jakarta as case studies where my research group has been studying. But I believe that the story will be applicable to many other ASEAN cities. So let me start my story. Oops, sorry about it. Excuse me. Oops, is that working? Oh, there we go. Now today, the entire world is suffering from COVID-19, and we are all struggling to find a way to overcome this pandemic. But on the other hand, global climate change is another huge hurdle all human beings have to tackle with. And by having these two major challenges, cities in the world are now discussing how to recover from the pandemic, not simply restoring what we used to have, but to use this occasion to make our cities greener. And greener means make our cities more resilient and sustainable. Now, cities in the world were and still are the places where energy, water, and food they consume are thoroughly depending on external supplies. But to make cities greener, some cities in the world are starting to introduce new urban systems. For example, what Paris and Portland are now aiming to achieve is to divide the entire city into smaller units and make those units self-sufficient as much as possible. Then can energy, water, and food be a part of such a system? Of course, it is impossible for those units to become thoroughly self-sufficient in energy, water, and food. But how about introducing a redundant system that includes not only external, but also internal supplies? Examining the history of Asian cities, we can identify a redundant food system that made Asian cities resilient. Edo, which is former Tokyo, was not an exception. Edo was one of the largest cities in the world, which accommodated over 1 million population already in the 18th century. But at the same time, Edo was a city with agriculture. According to our study, over 40% of the land area of Edo was for agriculture uses. So that means that Edo was a city based on redundant food systems. And this legacy was succeeded from Edo to Tokyo. Tokyo, which accommodates over 12 million population today, still maintains agricultural lands. Even in the central core area, which is about within 15 kilometer circle, and this is an area we call 23 wards. Actually, 11 wards out of 23 still maintain agricultural lands. So this is what you'll be saying. The real agricultural lands remaining in urban fabrics characterize Tokyo's land use system. Then what is the land use model behind this reality? Well, to make the long story short, when cities in Europe and North America are planned, the very first thing you do is to draw a line or boundary to clearly separate urban and rural land uses, and then start up to build up inside the boundary. So as a consequence, you will never find agricultural lands, the real agricultural lands, inside the boundary. But in Japan, instead of drawing a boundary, both urban and rural land uses orders were maintained, and then these two were overlaid. Then the boundary trying to separate urban and rural land uses was introduced afterwards. But simply, it was too late. So as a consequence, agricultural lands remained in urban fabrics, not illegally, but by having legal support. So this reality is not illegal, but when it comes to Japan, this is totally legal to have agricultural lands in urban fabrics. Then what is the advantage of maintaining agriculture in urban fabrics? Well, when it comes to ASEAN cities, not only Tokyo, but many cities in Asia, this is what we shouldn't forget. Natural disasters, including earthquakes, tsunamis, and tropical hurricanes called typhoons, in Asia. This map has been illustrated by the United Nations, which shows where megacities in the world are and where earthquakes are occurring. And you can easily realize that many cities and ASEAN cities are sitting on earthquake hotspots. So those who plan ASEAN cities should always keep this reality in their mind. And of course, in an ordinary situation when no natural disasters are occurring, of course, you may thoroughly depend upon external food supplies. But once this happens, well, there may be a chance that transportation systems will be collapsing and no food will be coming into the hungry city. Then how can we survive that? Well, the only thing you can do is to depend upon your own internal supplies. So I would say that maintaining such vernacular food systems with agriculture in urban fabrics should be rediscovered to make ASEAN cities resilient and sustainable. Now, a similar story can be identified in the history of Jakarta, Indonesia. When Batavia, the former Jakarta, was established as a colony by Dutch, it was planned and developed by having a clear separation between urban and rural land uses, just like any other cities in Netherlands. And then rural villages called kampoons were all located out of the city boundary. But when Jakarta started to grow in the 19th century, kampoons were swallowed up by sprawling urban fabrics, and urban-rural land use mixtures started to occur. And it was not only the land use, but the socio-economic systems in kampoons became to be a hybrid of urban and rural systems. Then, in the 20th century, especially since Indonesia became to be an independent country and Jakarta's explosive growth began, kampoons started to lose their rural identity and became to be deteriorated. And finally today, by losing their rural identity, many kampoons remaining in the city are regarded as a mere poor communities. So, to a certain extent, Tokyo and Jakarta shared a similar story, which is a layer of urban and rural systems, as you can see here. However, Tokyo somehow maintained its legacy to have agriculture in the city, while Jakarta unfortunately lost such a legacy. But once again, maintaining vernacular food systems with agriculture in urban fabrics should be rediscovered to make ASEAN cities resilient. So that's all about my story. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Oops, sorry.
Helen, I think you're muted.
Oh, apologies to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Yokohari. Valuable presentation. Quickly, a few important takeaways. Not all solutions need to be technological in nature. Cities are rich in natural capital, and we need to really consider about land use planning and the use of nature-based solutions for some of the urban challenges that we have. With that, let me now turn to our next speaker, please. Dr. Hale, Senior Research Engineer at the National Renewable Energy Labs. Dr. Hale, please, the screen is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you for inviting me to discuss our recent study of how Los Angeles can achieve a reliable 100% renewable energy power system, which is a study we call LA 100, and what lessons there might be for other locations around the world. Next, please. First, a little context. This is a map of the Los Angeles power system. The city of LA is shown in the map inset. It's the funny shaped white space. The city's power is provided by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, which is the largest municipal power utility in the United States, currently serving more than 4 million residents. LADWP has transmission connecting LA to key resources in the Western US, all located within the large Western Interconnect. However, in its power system planning and day-to-day operations, LADWP acts like an island, making sure it is always self-sufficient in supplying LA's demand for electricity. This makes achieving a 100% renewable target especially difficult. LA 100 is the first 100% renewable energy study of such a large system that must stay renewable and reliable at all times. Next, please. Matching the scale of the LADWP power system, the LA 100 study was large. Nearly 70 researchers ran, coordinated, and analyzed the outputs of many models, which were built up from numerous data sets. The study approach, input data, and outputs were all reviewed by subject matter experts at LADWP and by an advisory group comprised of various stakeholders from throughout the city. Next. The LA 100 study is a scenario study. One difference among our scenarios is on the demand side. Will customers electrify their cars, cooking ranges, and heating systems? Will they adopt more energy efficient technologies? And will some customer demand be flexible, such that workplace car charging could be delayed or houses pre-cooled to better align electricity demand with times of high solar generation? Next. The scenarios also vary based on how the renewable energy target is defined, how quickly the scenario needs to meet the target, and how easy or not it is to build new transmission. SB 100 represents LADWP's obligations under California law, 100% clean energy by 2045, with a target based on retail sales, not generation, and with natural gas generation offset by purchased renewable energy credits allowed for the last 10%. Early and no biofuels reaches the 100% clean energy target 10 years earlier by 2035 on a generation basis and without any natural gas or biofuels. Transmission focus is the only scenario that builds new transmission corridors. It and the limited new transmission scenario reach 100% by 2045 on a generation basis with no natural gas or nuclear energy. Next. Across all scenarios, the study shows a growth in electrification, energy efficiency, flexible load, customer rooftop solar, renewable energy, storage, distribution, transmission, and new renewably fueled combustion turbines. These combustion turbines with renewable fuel are operated infrequently in the future, not like today when natural gas is run daily. Next. In all scenarios, wind and solar provide 69% to 87% of future electricity demand. This means that for LA, all roads to about 90% renewable energy are very similar. The pathways diverge going from 90% to 100% renewables. This last 10% is what is needed for reliability during periods of very low wind and solar, extremely high demand, and unplanned events like transmission outages or an extreme weather event. To meet this last 10%, the study builds new local power plants with storable renewable fuels to maintain reliability. Next. How do the scenarios compare in meeting this last 10%? This chart shows the mix of technologies that gets built in order to maintain a reliable power system. Starting on the left, the colors show which types of power plants LADWP has today. Purple represents natural gas, pinks different types of storage, yellows are solar technologies, blue is wind, and the red on the bottom is nuclear. The other 4 columns represent what is built in each scenario by 2045. And while there is more in common across the scenarios than differences, the scenarios do vary based on what fuel is used in these local power plants. Next. The dark green represents a combustion turbine with a purchased fuel, which today is likely biofuels from dairy farms, but in 2045 could be fuels made from renewable electricity like hydrogen. Next. The light green represents fuel that LADWP produces from 100% clean electricity. The light green allows LADWP to get started today on supplying its own clean fuel, even before it is available for purchase from gas suppliers. The light green comes at a cost though. Next. Producing hydrogen adds about 20% to the cumulative costs in the LA100 study. Finally, the SB100 scenario continues to use natural gas, shown in purple, for meeting the last 10% based on how that scenario target is defined. You will also notice that in addition to wind and solar, what is common across all these scenarios is battery storage. Next. As I mentioned earlier, the early and no biofuel scenario meets the renewable target in 2035 rather than 2045 like the rest. The earlier transition results in higher costs, but this set of scenarios also has higher benefits, especially due to faster reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Next. You may not have noticed on the earlier slide, but the results we looked at were for the high load projection, not the moderate or stress projection. There is good reason for this. One of the key findings from the study is that the high projection, which has the highest levels of energy efficiency, electrification, and demand flexibility, it provides more greenhouse gas reductions, more health benefits, and lower per unit electricity costs compared to the other 2 load projections. For example, in the early and no biofuel scenario, the high projection costs captured by the study are 1 cent per kilowatt hour lower than the moderate projections, while also providing significantly more greenhouse gas reductions across the power, buildings, and light-duty vehicle sectors. Adverse health outcomes are also reduced. Next. So now we have seen how LA can achieve a reliable 100% renewable power system and achieve additional greenhouse gas, air quality, and public health benefits through the simultaneous electrification of vehicles, cooking, and heating, of course, combined with energy efficiency. Let's turn now to LADWP's water system. For the LA100 study, collaborators at the University of Southern California took a close look at LA's water system, which is also run by LADWP. Today, LA imports a lot of its public water supply. Looking forward, LA plans to continue its conservation efforts and to transition to higher levels of wastewater treatment that will allow them to pump more water back into their groundwater aquifers for indirect potable reuse. Next. In the LA100 study, Los Angeles aqueduct imports are reduced and Metropolitan Water District imports are ended altogether by 2030. The higher levels of treatment and groundwater recharge needed to make these changes will significantly increase the amount of electricity used for wastewater treatment and indirect potable reuse within the LADWP footprint. However, this is still less than 5% of LADWP electricity demand in all projection years, up from about 1.5% today. Next. This slide shows the amount of demand response available at system peak time for all LA100 load projections and model years. Keying in on the brown bars toward the bottom, we see that LADWP already reduces its water system loads during infrequent demand response events aimed at reducing system peak load. Next. In the high projection, the LA100 study assumes that LADWP could further coordinate electricity and water operations to enable more frequent or even daily timing shifts in how electricity is used for water supply and treatment. Such energy shifting services become more valuable as a power system incorporates more wind and solar. LADWP potentially has the opportunity to enable its water operations to support its power operations in this way as it moves towards 100% renewable energy. Next. Thank you all for your attention. If you would like to learn more, the full report and a data viewer are available at la100.org.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hale. We understand that the opportunities for diversifying from a fossil fuel energy economy are large, and particularly when we're looking at the region of ASEAN and Southeast Asia that are rich in both wind and solar. Similarly, they have the potential for biofuel generation. 60–70% of the waste in the region is based on organic biogenous waste. And so the potential to diversify from the current energy source is tremendous, and particularly as we're looking at the integration of systems as you well laid out. So thank you, and allow me now to please turn to our last speaker, Mr. Thomas Husley. He is the Director of Planning and Urban Design at the global architectural firm known as Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Dr. Hussey, please.
No doctor in this case, but I appreciate
Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you all. We can go ahead and advance to the first slide. For those of you that aren't familiar with SOM, we are a multidisciplinary design practice of architects, engineers, and planners working at the design of cities, really from the public space scale to the building scale to new districts, all the way up to new cities and even regional ecosystems. We're constantly looking to the future, and we firmly believe that the future is urban. And to be truly innovative, we must think beyond the scale of the building. We recently begun a year-long initiative with National Geographic to explore the issue of cities and help to define new ideas that will drive urban growth. Next. Through our interdisciplinary expertise, we're able to highlight future relationships of urban, natural, and social systems as they all interact with each other within our urban environment. Next. These ideas are all informed by scale, from looking at macro regions down to micro scale interventions, all with the goal of improving the quality of life and sustaining the shared resources. In this case, the shared resource is the Great Lakes ecosystem, but we look at other places around the world, such as the Red Sea, the Yellow River ecosystem within China, which I'll share with you later. Next. As city designers, we're able to measure the impact of our projects, and we turn to some of our legacy projects that have stood the test of the time over the number of years or decades. 30 years ago, we transformed the former industrial lands of Canary Wharf outside London into a new center of finance for all of Europe. Next. We attribute the success of Canary Wharf and the transformation that occurred there to the strong commitment to public transit that guided phase development, a strong focus on a concentration of amenities and the convenience that comes along with that, a large commitment to public space, an increasing mix of uses. Next. And here in Chicago, my city, where I speak to you from now, we were able to transform railways and surface parking lots into a multi-layered transit integrated Millennium Park. Next. But more than a green park, it really became a new heart for our city. And it's a reminder that the future of cities is about people, that cities must provide spaces that inspire and uplift the human spirit. Next. And as a global practice, our impact is global. We've been working to guide the growth of rapidly developing cities throughout the world, including in Southeast Asia. In Ho Chi Minh City, we developed a new framework for the city expansion called Saigon South, which has now been largely developed and implemented for a number of years now. And it creates not only a new urban center, next, but more importantly, it's designed around the local climate and ecology, and it's adaptable so that it's able to incorporate the local culture and ways of life that exists within the city. Next. And more recently, we're guiding one of the largest new developments in Southeast Asia, One Bangkok. Architecture is done by SOM as well as a number of other international firms. But we developed the guidelines and the principles that all buildings share. That they all share commonalities in building shading and materials and sky gardens and collective amenities. Next. And importantly, at the ground level, they all share common principles around the public realm, of creating a walkable, diverse, comfortable streetscape, all under shaded streets that help deal and mitigate with the extremely hot climate of Bangkok. Next. Looking ahead to our current and future work, we are very much driven by the demands to correct the course in our struggle with planetary health. Carbon emissions continue to outpace the population growth globally. Next. And as the world becomes more urbanized, it's clear that cities cannot continue to be a source of the problem. But when designed intelligently, adaptively, and regeneratively, cities must become the solution. Next. We all know cities are very complex organisms. They host a diverse set, oftentimes contradictory set of systems. And at SOM, we developed 10 principles that can help drive our approach to design of these cities. And with each project, we attempt to prioritize these strategies to focus on the ones that are most critical for the environment in which we're working, and then integrate these systems as much as possible for synergy amongst them. Next. So I took the idea of a tale of three cities and embedded it within this presentation, but we'll just give you a quick glimpse of three different cities in which we've been working. And you'll notice commonalities amongst all of them. And at the heart of each, there's a primary goal to relate to the immediate context and the natural resources. These are all resources that originally spawned the reason for urban settlement in those locations, and thus they must be protected and sustained for the betterment of humanity and the environment. Next. The first one we'll look at is Jinan, China. We've led a team for the environmental planning of a 50-kilometer stretch of the Yellow River ecosystem outside of Jinan. Here we're able to showcase then how urban settlement can be in harmony with the ecosystem while still embracing and upgrading the agricultural heritage of the area. Next. The result then is a pattern of urbanism that celebrates agriculture and the economy that goes along with it in daily low impact living. And this becomes then a community scale prototype that balances water resources throughout the region. Next. With all our work, we strive to align our research with the new urban agendas in which we face. In Shong'an, China, which is a new model city for China, instigated from the highest levels of the central government, we developed a plan that really tries to integrate approaches to energy and mobility and ecology. And working with a number of consultants, then develop a path towards carbon neutrality by 2050. Next. Here we place a strong emphasis on modest, human-centric, compact neighborhoods that promote walkability and biking and next generation shared electric mobility, which would ultimately be powered by renewable resources. And this is all immersed within a forested lakeside and landscape that restores ecology and sequesters carbon. Next. And the last of the three here, we've been working on a long-range plan for a sister city to Ho Chi Minh City. This has been a study to create balanced, integrated urbanism in the area called Nong Trak, next to Ho Chi Minh City. Next. And here you can see its immediate relationship to the city and its position along the Mekong River. And here we must take into account the sensitivities and threats that go along with developing in that ecological setting. So we must proactively plan for flooding, sea level rise, and establish ecological levees and preserve the mangroves that are there to support the ecosystem and turn that into a level of protection for the urban environment. Next. We accomplish these goals by aligning city systems for optimization and mutual success. We carefully position urban clusters for compact, connected living and establish a city framework that absorbs stormwater naturally into the open spaces, which boosts the ecology and protects the city and its people. Next. Meanwhile, then, the result is the ability to create an identity for the city that responds to its local context and allows people to engage with the natural surroundings for health and well-being. Next. And what's interesting to us as city designers is that large-scale thinking is critical in solving today's global challenges. We bear a responsibility to drive that change in a positive direction. Just finally here's just a quick glimpse of our vision for an open call for Indonesia's new capital city initiative. By moving its capital city to Borneo, Indonesia is attempting to alleviate the burden facing existing Jakarta, and at the same time create a new city based on sustainable and future-forward principles. We believe it's a chance for Southeast Asia to model a prototype for next generation city building. Next. And just to conclude here, we wanted to share with you a very brief video. It's just a 2-minute video that outlines an initiative that we call Region Cities, which is really all about how do we take all the inputs that go into cities, such as energy, food, water, and rather than waste portions of those systems through waste outputs, find ways to take the outputs and reuse them within the cities to further guide the growth and development and operation of our cities. So I'll turn it over to the video.
In human history, more people live in cities than not. The current system is unsustainable. As our cities continue to grow, we need to take new approaches to how we design them and how we live in them. The current regional growth model processes inputs, such as fossil fuels, food, and people, to produce synergies of activity, culture, and economic development. But this model also generates outputs, like greenhouse gases, waste, and inequity. This current linear metabolism consumes and pollutes, but we can start doing something to change that right now. To build more efficient cities, we must eliminate these externalities while simultaneously repairing past errors. We must think beyond sustainability and resiliency and develop a net positive city, a city that regenerates itself. Regenerative cities apply outputs from one system as inputs of another. Renewable energy, water conservation, and local food production influence the design of the built environment, including infrastructure, transportation, and land use. These improved regenerative efficiencies, in turn, mend our urban ecology. As we endeavor to create cities that are responsible to future generations, we must learn to heal as we grow, in a manner that makes cities more equitable, just, and livable. Not for a few, but for everyone. It is in this spirit that SOM hopes to define a new ethos in human habitation. We call this initiative Region Cities. Region stands for regenerative, a method of urban development that seeks to build a restorative relationship with nature and create inclusive well-being, health, and happiness for everyone, now and into the future. So, how do we transform our current weaknesses into a net positive city? In this video series, we'll learn from uncommon collaborators and explore contemporary innovations that illustrate the components of a regenerative city. There are 10 principles that drive SOM's city design practice. They form the foundation of our Region Cities equation. Uniting each of these principles strengthens our goal of creating a diverse and responsive civic framework that produces more than it consumes. This is our ethos. This is Region Cities. This is SOM.
Thank you very much, Tom, for this enlightening presentation. I fully agree that cities need to be people-centric. Cities are also the solution, but only when cities are planned and designed with the natural environment, with the microclimate in mind, and with the proper infrastructure and investments really to move us towards social ecological balance and climate resiliency and stability. And with that, I believe that we are entitled to a short break. I will pass it back to Jeff. Thank you very much to all the panelists.
Welcome back. It looks like we're at 12 minutes past the hour, so we'll get started again. We have a couple of questions that we thought we'd start out with before heading into the next session. And one of them, it looks like it's for Dr. Yokohari. It's asking what indicators other than land use could be used to measure the urban-rural linkages in smart cities. Yokohari, are you able to answer that question?
Sure, yes. Well, first of all, thank you very much for a very valuable question. Well, yes, so you're asking about the indicators to measure urban-rural linkages. Well, I would say that quantitatively, identifying the amount of food provided by local farmers and consumed by local citizens will be one of the ways that you will be able to identify that kind of linkages. But to do so, I would say that there are two key considerations that you have to keep in your mind. First is that in many cases, local produced and locally consumed food may not go through the wholesale market, but often they're based on direct chain between producers and consumers. So that sometimes it's very difficult to measure, how much those vegetables or fruits are going through in between local farmers and local consumers. So to have a very careful identification process will be needed to identify such kind of linkages. And the second is that also when you're measuring the amount, usually when you're measuring the amount of the food, you measure by calorie or weight. But when it comes to those products in urban areas, most of them are vegetables and fruits, which means that they're not really contributing to calorie and also the weight as well. So that, for example, taking nutrients or fibers, those should be a sort of indicators that you should be considering when you're measuring how much food will be coming from the local producers to local consumers. So I hope that I'm answering to your question, but that's going to be my answer. Thank you.
If I may, Dr. Yokohari, ask
Sure,
you
please.
another question. Jeff, unless you have another question from the audience.
There is one more for Mr. Hussey when we have a chance.
Okay, let me ask Dr. Yokohari this.
Yes.
Dr. Yokohari, there is a trend in some respects for vertical farming in urban environments. Singapore is one of the leaders, as well as other places. The US is starting and other places throughout the world. I am wondering from your experience, how viable is that strategy for addressing issues of food security and just generating sufficient amount of food for the city demand?
Well, thank you very much. Well, I would say that it's better than having nothing. So especially when it comes to the city like Singapore, where you don't have enough room, everywhere is already totally built up. I think that will be the only option that it will be having the vertical farming in greenhouses or rooftop gardens and so on. But once again, when it comes to ASEAN cities, quite often, instead of just directly going into that direction, they do have a lot of potential still remaining in the city, which they're not really realizing it. Sometimes the lands are simply abandoned, or sometimes they're only used for some sort of illegal uses or so on. And to make the best use of these potential that they have might be listed as a first, and then those high-tech stories will be coming next, I think.
Thank you very much for that. That's a very good point. We should actually look to optimize infill sites, abandoned sites that could be used for better purposes.
Yes.
So Jeff, I turn it over to you.
Sure. We have one question here from Mr. Hussey from SOM. maybe kind of a difficult one, but it says the imperatives for building regenerative cities are known. Urban planning tools are available, policy support is evolving, but who would eventually pay for it? Willingness to pay by the users of such improved ecosystem services and the fiscal capacity of city governments is limited in ASEAN cities. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, great question. And it gets into urban economics, which by no means I'm an expert in, but of course it impacts the work we do on a day-to-day basis. I think it depends a little bit on whether we're talking about new or existing cities. Working with existing cities is of course much more complicated to go in and retrofit built infrastructure, and there's a cost that comes with that. When you work in newer urban environments, it's a little bit easier to develop infrastructure systems that are optimized from the start, that can have more promise of higher performance down the road. But some systems like some of the water strategies we put forth are lower cost systems if they can be built that way, like relying more on natural systems and natural filtration of water rather than built infrastructure that requires energy intensive cleaning and pumping. Just becomes over the long term much cheaper system to maintain. Similarly, I guess with energy too, it's a hope that the economics of the systems that are being developed in renewable energy and energy storage will eventually come to the point where it actually becomes more affordable to adopt those systems than to operate on the older outdated systems. When it gets to the resiliency that we promote, I think there's sometimes some costs that come with making cities more resilient. But when you look at the potential impact and threat to the costs that come with natural disasters down the road, you can begin to clearly justify the upfront investment that would occur with that. And I think a lot of the systems that are going into cities now are being developed through the tech industry, and a lot of them can rely on existing built infrastructure, and it becomes more digital infrastructure that overlays within those. So introducing shared mobility systems that work within existing rights of way, or optimizing the logistics systems that happen throughout cities. In some cases, you can actually work on the existing built infrastructure, but do it in a much smarter way. So it's a very difficult question to answer holistically, but I think if you look at certain aspects of that, there's strategies that perhaps can find more cost-effective solutions. But then it is about the economic side of partnering with the relevant people that can provide the funding up front and can justify the long-term return on those investments.
All right, we'll hand it over to you, Josh, if you're there.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to all our previous panelists. This has been fun. I'll start with building on what I talked about yesterday, moving from urbanization nexus fundamentals to a comment and critique we had of trying to really build the value proposition here. What are the metrics? A little bit more focus on design principles across disciplines, and some of the insights we're learning about from ASEAN cities and our expert group that will also be supporting the pilot cities that are selected from the application process. Next slide, please. So first, just a thank you to State Department and NREL for enabling this exciting project. We have a great team here working together. Next slide. I'll share the agenda for this is both motivation and measuring success, and it'd be great to get inputs at the end. I'll do a looking back and looking forward on yesterday, 2 days ago now, and looking at today's session. Next slide, please. Okay, so urbanization is clearly a theme here. I appreciated a tale of more than 3 cities. And this is just projections looking out way beyond what we usually plan for, 2200, of a world in which we could have a almost 90% urban planet. And most of the cities that will be urban are in context of what are still defined as developing world, rather than what we now think of as maybe Western or developing countries or developed countries. I'll share a statistic that we've seen 20,000 American football fields, or you could think of soccer fields, are potentially being converted to urban areas every day for the next 40 years. And 60% of the urban land that will exist in 2050 is not yet built. And that might mean even 70% of the infrastructure that we'll have in place by then has not even been designed yet. So I think concepts around regenerative urbanism and how we meet these incredible demands for all sorts of infrastructure, including food, energy, water, will be challenging in the years ahead. Some cities, if they double in 20, 30 years, it's not just a 80% increase in energy needs or 60% increase in food or water, it's over 100% or more. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is to honor Anu. I'm gonna have Isabel click through here. One thing that we might be able to bring forward in this approach to transboundary, when we defined greenhouse gas emissions at a city scale, previous approaches were looking at within city boundaries, scope 1. Scope 2 was more electricity generation and needs for within the city boundaries. That's what we were able to cover. In the past decade, we've started measuring what's now defined as transboundary, the flows, viewing city as demand centers and using life cycle analysis, material flow analysis, urban metabolism approaches. Isabel, if you click through, there's going to be 6. Oh, I guess the animation doesn't work. Okay. What I'll share is that you can see commuters going through the boundary, freight and goods, that includes moving food, airline travel, as well as food production outside city boundaries for demands in cities, are treating water and waste, and even just the materials that we need for urban life, cement, shelter, cement, steel that provides us shelter. And so if you look at this pie chart, the top left there is all these transboundary items that we previously didn't account for. And so I think when we take a more integrated approach, it may also open up new opportunities for us. Food clearly being one key opportunity. Next slide. So this is the city of Denver. And when you use that approach to greenhouse gas emissions accounting, they are looking at lots of new opportunities. They're also able to benchmark from a city to a national level on emissions per capita and come up with strategies that could create over 20 billion in savings as investments in reducing emissions. At the top here, sectors of waste and consumption, as well as transportation, are brought forward of GHG emissions impacts, as well as program costs. Circular economy around infrastructure for waste is a really high impact on GHG for low program costs. And other examples of land use and charging stations on the transportation side. I'll for purposes of going quickly here, I'll just say there's many climate impacts. We've discussed those, and important for cities to plan for resiliency as well, not just mitigation of emissions. Next slide. Okay, so to bring some more numbers to why this nexus, if we built on Elaine's what's happening in Los Angeles to a whole nationwide scale in the US, this was a study that actually was led by one of the first people to host me at NREL, Doug Arendt. He led a study showing that if we achieved 80% renewable electricity, we could achieve the same level of greenhouse gas emissions reduction, around 80%. We could also reduce or cut 50% of the water requirements for electricity generation. And this would be with only 3% of the land area of the US. So you could think about what this looks like for at different scales, from a LA to a whole national scale, and perhaps in locations around ASEAN as well. And we're doing this now in India on a national scale, a large scale effort around national renewable energy integration into the grid. And in places like Delhi, where pollution levels could be quite high, as well as in other Southeast Asia cities, a real opportunity for improving health outcomes as a primary goal. Next slide. Okay, this is more of the social side, so less the technical. If we looked at a flooding event or a Hurricane Sandy in the US, like New York or in Colorado, we can map out the linkages between sectors. Are they weak ties? Are they strong ties? And a clear analysis of how our infrastructure is configured can really depend on not just engineers coming together, but also various institutions, policies, and even informal practices that exist in our cities. There's high levels of different segregation, low and high income. There's also differentiated risk and vulnerability. And it's clear in many parts of the world, there's a lack of infrastructure, especially in peri-urban areas. Next slide, as perhaps an opportunity space. And thinking along these lines, there's a team of us, some who are in attendee mode here in our community of practice, who came up with a concept around Renew, bringing together food, energy, water on a small scale and really focused on decentralized closed loop systems around peri-urban, that boundary that was mentioned earlier of the rural to urban, accelerating service access, enhancing resilience, improving conditions for people with market-based approaches. So this was at a UN Habitat Assembly 2 years ago. We started working on this idea about 4 or 5 years ago, and exciting to see this type of integrated urban services program perhaps be a continuation of thinking along these lines. Next slide, please. So here's some of the aspirations that we had for the Renew that I think are still relevant to integrated urban services. I'll also mention some principles that we can draw on from different disciplines. I think we heard from Tom as an architect. He offered 10 principles from planning, designing on a human scale, engineering renewable rather than depleting or perhaps regenerative, policy and governance, allocating authority at multiple levels, maybe from the community to the city to the utility region scale to the national, and understanding consumption and behavioral actors, their situation. Is this service going to save them time, save them money, add comfort or convenience to their life, or access to new opportunities? Next slide, please. So another part of my research has been on this idea of leapfrogs. India is often cited as moving from a landline directly to smartphones. Perhaps there's an opportunity as we build out this new infrastructure of the 21st century. Could we leapfrog over fossil fuels to renewables and efficiency, as painted through Elaine's talk on 100% renewable energy? Could we move from privately owned gas vehicles to shared electric on-demand transportation, from polluted and resource scarce economies to more healthy, resilient, abundant economies through more shared and circular approaches? And then in this project itself, I understand we sometimes do have siloed sectors, planning decisions. Maybe an incremental shift would be the integration of two. I think what we're really hoping for and aspiring to here is a real holistic integration across sectors, bringing together both technical and non-technical teams to reduce inequality and risk and achieve prosperity. Next, please. Okay, so many smart cities often talk about technical side. This is a critique, a colleague who's working on an urbanization, food, energy, water nexus. She made a great comment of integrated management doesn't emerge just because people say it's important or creates efficiencies. We need places that include strong champions with legitimacy and authority to compel participation in policy integration over time. And this might be despite competing priorities of maybe near term to longer term, or what re-election might look like and so on. So I won't go into more detail here other than we probably need technical inputs as well as non-technical. There's many resources in this NREL Clean Energy Solution Center on the policy side. And I think as part of any new approach, if we continue to reinforce inequalities, we may not head in the right direction. So thinking through, is there a role and benefits to underserved communities in this integrated urban services program is one more question brought forward in projects similar to this one. Next, please. Okay, so we have ingredients and successes that we've seen from other projects. I won't go into detail here, but I think we've touched on some of these, the Urban Nexus project, Naga City in Philippines, Da Nang in Vietnam, Karat in Thailand, many thinking about different aspects of finance and business to governance to inclusive decision-making and bringing together science, research, technology, and innovation. Lots to learn from, including how we map out the actors and institutions that might bring about this change. Next, please. Okay, this is another just successes. And so that was more the social side. This is more the maybe technical side of reduce, reuse, recycle, and different, on the image here on the right, different ways in which we've seen integration, at least across energy water systems, from pumped storage to energy efficient pumping on the water side to net positive wastewater utilities, to thinking through efficiencies, to hydropower, to just integrated planning. Next, please. So in diving into the region, here's some recent news. We see clear challenges around flood risks. There's been blackouts, there's been typhoons, there's even been a lockdown as vaccines are distributed and many people rushing to vaccine sites, and a near stampede of residents flocking to these destinations. So real clear challenges happening today, right now. I think an important question to ask is, how can our program here really solve problems of today that also address longer term issues as well? And an example here is low income families receiving about $20 to $80 during the lockdown, and concerns still about food and essential items if staying in lockdown. Next slide. I spoke to this earlier, we can skip ahead, but wastewater is a challenge and opportunity. You can skip this as well. This is Singapore and some of what they've done around digital economy. Singapore has a 2030 initiative and challenges they've addressed, and really as a pioneer in the region. We know that cities are really growing quickly in the region, and we're really thinking about at least 3 different actors that can solve problems: those that are designing services or operating them, those that are the users of services to critique and think through opportunities to improve them, and then those that are actors across scales in government or across sectors, bringing these aspects together. Next slide. Okay, so this is a visual from the Smart Cities Network. It puts the ASEAN in context. Clearly, mobile connectivity has rapidly gone up. Internet connection, social media penetration, it's about 50 to 80%. And so some still without that digital connectivity. Ideas around services in that context, is it working for everyone? Next, please. Okay, just another image here around sanitation, GDP per capita. We can compare on a country level as well as city level. And I think once we have the 2 cities that are the pilots, we might want to look at how does this compare to the national level and other cities in the region on different maybe integrated metrics. Next slide. I'm going to skip these next 5 or 6. These are, I'm going to come back to them after the polling. It's just examples of NREL working on energy water topics. This is a water security research network. Isabel, I'll have you just go quickly through these, working across users and source waters to get to additional alternative water sources and security of water with energy efficient approaches. This is more university ideas around microgrids. Next, working with the Navy on opportunities for water reuse, microgrids, and equity. Next slide, please. So just to get into results, we've reviewed some of the surveys in the region around challenges. We've also conducted our own, as well as targeted interviews. So I'll have you go quickly, Isabel, through these. This shows personal safety security is critical. We also see urban resilience and inclusive equitable growth, resource access and efficiency as very highly ranked. We also see different ways of describing these cities in the region of early movers, emerging champions, more agile seedbeds, maybe smaller scale cities. Keep going. This was our survey results, some of what was brought up as topics of highest interest. I think Jen did a great job with the word cloud of just one word examples of this. Next. This speaks to the highest challenges described for the region. In purple, the policy environment or regulatory environment may be making integrated approaches challenging. In gray, you have limited organizational capacity and time, and in green, lack of access to finance. Next. Okay, this is where we could help provide technical support. So analysis is clearly one, technology and solutions. I'll have you go to the next one. And for future webinars, some of the topics we've heard of as interest of how do we develop approaches for aggregating projects to lower risks and costs, accessing tools for inclusive policy planning and project development, and others. And so we'll do a combined approach of NREL working with our community of practice and expert group to help bring together webinars, knowledge sharing, and helping advance solutions, at least with the first 2 cities in the application pool that are selected. Next. This is our experts group. You've heard from some of them over the course of this workshop. Thank you to all of them for their participation. And you'll hopefully get to learn from their expertise over the course of this program. Next. We've been doing listening sessions with this expert group and the community of practice. We hope to do more directly with the cities to learn more about their priorities. We've been scanning the literature to learn, and also speaking to individuals who've had a lot of efforts in the region. Next, please. Okay, these were our objectives. We're working on a survey that's gone out to some of you, private sector and universities. Next. Some of the enablers, starting with needs, relevance to the local context, identifying strong leadership, forms of partnerships, business model planning, data, scenarios, and moving from a concept to testing, learning in the real world were identified as key areas. Some of the barriers you've heard of these challenges, leading countries we've talked about, Singapore, Vietnam, Philippines, and so on. I'll keep going for sake of time. I can skip to the next one. This is some of the action plans, Batam Bang, and then also Luang Prabang. Here's a focus on solid waste management and public space management. Same for in Laos of green spaces, how we think about those as opportunities. An idea we've seen work in other parts of the world are waste sites converted into public spaces that are more valued, and taking waste and turning it into a resource, integrating energy, water, food, and spaces for children to play and learn about a more ecological form of development. Next, please. Okay, questions ahead, addressing risk, access to finance, best entry points, how do we co-create these solutions and use design principles, and what scale and boundary should or could we consider for these solutions. Next, please. Okay, so we have this polling, and Isabel, I'll have you switch it over. All right, let's go ahead. So this is the discipline that you primarily represent, just getting a sense of our audience. And please use one word or put dashes between multiple so that they show up as one. Okay, we have a strong representation of government, engineering, environment, information technology, tech transfer. Great, so I think what comes to mind for me is how do we broaden this type of group to additional disciplines, maybe architecture, finance or business, and so on. This is great, thank you. All right, Isabel, let's go to the next one. So when you think of top needs for integrated services, is there a primary starting point that of these 5 options come to mind? Okay, so seeing a strong priority here around resource efficiency and waste management, which is consistent with prior surveys. Food is seemingly higher than the other. Focus on water, energy, resilience to extremes. Great. Oh, resilience just jumped up. Okay. Isabel, next one, please. Okay, we're going to focus in on waste was mentioned here as a top one. So if we include water, wastewater, waste management, types of commonly occurring issues within that space. I think you're required to just pick one. Okay, reuse, recycling, resource recovery, relatively equal between flooding and pollution / health risk, lack of access to services, and efficiency of treatment and management. Flooding just jumped up a bit higher. Oh, there goes pollution too. Okay, this is great. Gives us a little bit of a sense of the top issues. Next, please. Okay, now with regards to electricity, what's the most commonly occurring issue? Okay, so this one seems pretty close between clean energy and addressing power outages. A little bit on pollution and health impacts. Thank you for your responses. This is great. Next, please. Okay, around food, can we get a better idea of most important issue for your city or the one you're most familiar with in ASEAN? Unhealthy food, land availability, poor food quality is up there with unhealthy food waste and damage. I think Anu mentioned, or Dr. Ramaswamy mentioned that in her talk. So pretty close balance here of unhealthy, damage, waste, poor food quality. Okay, next, please. And I think we'll do one or two more. This was one that Helen brought forward in reading some of the Urban Nexus literature. Is a committee that makes decisions around these different sectors possible and feasible and valuable to adopt in your city. Okay, and maybe the next question for the nose is why or why not? It looks like it's jumping up now, so about 60% say yes, about 40% say no. All right, thank you. This is helpful. Next, please. Okay, and then success metrics for our program or for integrated urban services. What might be the most useful or motivating or justifying these types of investments? Okay, costs, emissions, relatively equal with our resilience, disaster recovery jumping up now. This is really helpful, thank you. It's surprising to see a pretty simplified set of metrics here. It's now seeing health. Okay, this is great, thank you. I will end there, Jeff. We may follow up with additional questions after, and I think we do have a follow-up survey, but I wanted to just create some open space for interaction, discussion. Maybe those who have been from the expert group, if you would like to comment based on some of the initial synthesis. I don't think we've had hours of conversations, and I don't think I could do it all justice in this short talk, but would welcome our experts group offering a few reflections or comments, maybe based on the polls or what we've heard so far.
I think all the questions we've received so far have been addressed, actually. So what we can do is we can hand it over to Helen, who I know has a few closing comments that she would like to bring up. And if anybody does have questions, feel free to chat them in. We may have a couple minutes afterwards to get to those. So let's hand it over to Helen.
That's good. Thanks, Jeff.
Great. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Josh, and thank you to all the participants. I'd like to close us off with a few key thoughts and reflections, both from the audience as well as from our speakers. The Integrated Urban Services Program, in large part, is largely an economic program. It is an opportunity for cities to actually adopt a new circular economic model. And this speaks to current discussions within the region and the recent East Asia Summit and the thinking about green economic recovery. This is very forefront on the minds of governments around the world, and including our region, that we just had a range of summits just last week. Cities are essential in this discussion, given that cities are economic engines, and cities are also the providers of critical urban services. So it behooves those that actually are government representatives, and as we saw from our poll, to actually help advance these concepts that we've discussed for the past 2 days, the idea of circular economic models and systems integration to be able to deliver what is essential: energy, food, water, to the quality of life in cities. So with this, I'd like to leave just a few thoughts, is that the Integrated Urban Services Program fosters green and healthy recovery through sustainable practices that support both economic growth and long-term climate goals. This is critical, both not only for the region, as well as for the global biosphere. We are, next slide, please. We have a number of tools before us. They were outlined yesterday and they were outlined again today. And they go beyond ICT and technological fixes. Clearly, a smart, sustainable city is underpinned in large part by technological applications, but please keep in mind what have been said by some of our speakers, is that we need to look at the microclimates, and we need to look at our natural capital, and we need to look at things like nature-based solutions, as well as master and holistic urban planning, to be able to design the city that is sustainable and addresses the needs of our citizens, not of the automobile. So we're looking at people-centric cities that provide the stability and the resiliency for healthy quality of life. So mobilizing government and the private sector, as well as international organizations and a range of stakeholders, from the urban planner to the engineer to the biologist to the technologists, are all critical in this challenge before us. And clearly, we need to have the policymakers and the economists to be able to show where is that value proposition that has been addressed and has been reiterated as critical metrics that need to be made before our leaders to be able to move forward with a new circular approach. Next slide, please. And let me conclude by saying the program, the Integrated Urban Services Program that forms part of the US ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership, aims to advance local climate health, well-being, innovation, resource recovery, and partnerships across sectors and across disciplines. We aim to improve the delivery of critical urban services to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions and to strengthen urban resiliency. I encourage the cities that are participating
onto those. Okay, great. There's a little back and forth going on there. Are we frozen on your end? I think
it froze on my end. Sorry, guys.
Okay, no worries. Are you able to share slides? I think we're just going to wrap it up. Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. This is the day and age that we currently live in now. So I appreciate everybody's patience. It was really wonderful to see your participation, especially through the polling and through the chat today. I saw a lot of wonderful questions for our experts, and you have us thinking as well as a project team. So thank you for all of those inputs. Again, as a next step, a critical focus of this program are the pilot projects. And as Parthiv mentioned, we do have the upcoming timeframe that is presented here. The applications will become available here in the coming week or two by the end of August. We will also be hosting a webinar to answer more questions. I saw some of those come through in the Q&A as far as criteria and scoring. And so we will have more of those details to share with you in September during this webinar. So those will be forthcoming. For the time being, we definitely encourage you to think about this, think about what kind of projects you might be able to put forward, which partners you might be able to engage in bringing a project together. And we are also happy to partner with you. We do not want you to feel discouraged or intimidated at the prospect of putting together an application. Please come to us first. We would love to have a conversation with you and talk through your specific needs and see if it's a fit and if we can help you. So please come to us first. You see Parthiv's email address on this slide, and we would love to have a conversation with you. And again, the final application deadline is October 25th that we are targeting. And then we hope to start working in earnest with the pilot cities towards the end of this calendar year, if not early next calendar year. Next slide, please. So a quick recap, we will be sharing materials from both days of this workshop. Thank you so much for participating. There is a recording that will be available. We will also be sharing the application. So look for some forthcoming emails from us. Also, please contact us if you would like to join our community of practice. This is a great way to stay engaged and kind of on the periphery of the activities taking place as part of this project. I saw a few Q&A questions, especially from private sector or startup partners about how they might be able to participate in the pilots. That would be a great way for you to engage. So please come forward to us. Let us know of your interest and your areas of expertise. We can also help to do some matchmaking and look at cities and their specific needs and how we can all partner together. And then the final question, please, we could appreciate a little bit of your input as we close out today. We have a post survey. I believe it's just 5 quick questions, and we would greatly appreciate your input as we close out this event. We will use that information to better form our activities moving forward. So thank you all again so much for your time. And with that, we will close it out for the evening or the morning, wherever you are. Take care and thank you.